Welcome to the Hermetic Astrology Podcast. I'm Gary Caton in Waynesville, North Carolina. You can find me on the web at dreamastrologer.com. And today is Sunday, November 24th. And earlier today, about 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we had an exact conjunction of the two benefics, Venus and Jupiter, the two brightest objects besides the sun and the moon, at around 28 degrees of Sagittarius. This is the location of the galactic center. And so there's been a lot of talk. I was really surprised because, in my world, Venus Jupiter conjunctions are a big deal, all of them, because it's like, wow. I mean, check this out, right? Let me just show you why they're a big deal in my world. Because if you look at what I saw the other night, I shared this on Facebook, this photograph, and it got like hundreds of likes and dozens of shares and all this stuff. But you can see, I mean, Venus and Jupiter are incredibly bright. Here, Saturn actually looks brighter than it usually does here because there's some of that Smoky Mountain mist that's coming through there, and it sort of serves as a magnifying effect. And you can see here the Milky Way. This is the band, this is the galactic equator, right? But I mean, just look at that. It's incredible. And I was really feeling the energy too, by the way, standing there just super jazzed. And so I recommend, first and foremost, everybody just get out there and lay your eyes on this thing, because that's probably one of the best ways to experience a transit, is to get out under the sky and experience the awesomeness of the living sky. And of course, I've been dedicated to this. In alchemy, we have three principles. And by the way, for those who are wondering what the heck I'm talking about, who are just listening, you can see all the visuals that I'm going to be laying down here on the YouTube channel for the show, and I'll put that link in the notes here. But yeah, I would say that the teachings, the ancient teachings, the writings, these books that, these venerable books that have been passed down through the ages, these would represent the body or the salt of the astrological tradition, right? But the soul, the driving force of the reason why we do astrology to begin with, is the sky, and what I found is that getting back out under the sky, because I'm going to tell you, making a living as an astrologer is not easy. So, and there's all kinds of people jumping on the bandwagon nowadays. I got news for you. They're not all going to last. It's hard. You got to have some serious staying power. And I'm not wishing anybody ill, by the way. I want them all to succeed. But the fact is, they're not going to, because it's a tough game to succeed in. And what I found is that getting back out under the night sky gave me that soul connection to my art that kept me going through the hard times, you see. And so it's been something that I've been dedicated to for a while now. And while I'm talking about that, I want to share another photograph here. This is Jupiter and Saturn earlier this year, and you can see here the constellation of Scorpius. And there's the Milky Way rising out of the Scorpion's tail, right? And here's Jupiter and Saturn straddling the Milky Way. We're going to be gathering next year, July 16th through 19th, 2020, in Moffett, Colorado, which is near the Great Sand Dunes Monument in south central Colorado, San Luis Valley. Really, really dark skies. That valley is still very pristine. There's hot springs. We're going to have a caterer come in and feed everybody. And you're going to see scenes even better than this, which, here in the Smoky Mountains, it's relatively dark for the East Coast, but it's nothing compared to what we see out there in Colorado. Last time, the skies were just amazing. And so this is an opportunity to come and commune with spiritual community, commune with the sky, and also receive this influx of energy that is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that only happens every 20 years. You can find out more about that at skyastrologyconference.com. We have the Sky Astrology Conference page on Facebook, of course. But yeah, I was out there looking at this thing, you know, just seeing it with my face. And it was really powerful. So I invite everybody to do that. Now, I want to show some things that you can just barely begin to see here in this photograph. You see, as the galactic equator comes up here, there's some stars up here in the corner of the photograph that I want to outline for you, because it gives an idea of how do we begin to make meaning of what in the world does the galactic center even mean, right? Because it's this thing that's so far away. First of all, how could it mean anything because it's so far away? And second of all, how do we make meaning of it in that case? Now, as far as the distance, I would say that you know, there's two things. There's a super massive black hole there, right? So there's this incredible gravitational force that's going on there. And yet at the same time, as it chews up stuff, you know, interstellar stuff, stars and everything, it spits out a huge, I mean, they've shown recently like these huge clouds of energy coming out of this thing. So for me, the distance, I don't think that's necessarily a problem, because this point in space, the galactic center, has captured the imagination of humans for a very long time. In fact, I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But you can see here these stars. This is Aquila, the eagle, and down here you can see Scorpius. And this is right here. This is the reason why the eagle is considered the higher vibration of Scorpio, because as they go through the sky, the eagle goes through a higher part of the sky than Scorpio does, right? And then you have here, this is Sagittarius, the archer, and this is the bow of the archer, and the bow points right at galactic center, which is right here. So here you have the ecliptic plane on which the planets move relatively close to the ecliptic plane. And then here you have the galactic equator that goes up through. This is Sagitta, the arrow, and this is Aquila. This is the bright star of the eagle, which the galactic equator goes right by. So you can just get an idea of what exactly you're looking at there. And then if we go out a little bit further, I had some ideas of how to make meaning from the galactic center that came to me when I was writing for my buddy Eric Francis of the website Planet Waves. He's one of the first pioneers of astrology on the internet, by the way. And what I started realizing is, you know, there's basically 4 constellations that surround this part of the sky. Right here is galactic center. There's a little cross there in the diagram. Here's the tail of Scorpius, right, points towards it, and then the bow of the archer points pretty much at it there too. So you can see here's the galactic equator, the center of the Milky Way, and here's Venus and Jupiter approaching that, and then on the other side we saw Saturn, right? But notice how you have Aquila, the eagle, Ophiuchus, the snake charmer. Ophiuchus is this figure that's like wrestling this big snake. And then you have more familiar constellations of the Sagittarius, the archer, and Scorpius, the scorpion. These all basically represent 4 different orientations to death. You know, scorpion is the awareness that death can come for you anytime, any place. Just like that, boom, you're stung, you're dead, it's over. And we live with that, knowing, especially if we live in the presence of those kind of animals and those kind of, you know, we may live with it more immediately. But that's the truth of existence. We never know. Tomorrow may be my day, you know. That's why warriors and even spiritual warriors, they have a saying, say, yeah, you know what? It's a good day to die. And what that means is not like I want to die. Absolutely not. What it means is I'm going to meet death with courage and conviction that um, that it's a part of life and that it's a transition, not a final state. You know what I'm saying? And just meeting it with um, fortitude rather than like, all this, um, scariness, this anxiety that people can get carried away with. Um, Sagittarius, the archer, is of course the ability to deliver death, basically, right? There's a star, one of the most malefic stars in the sky. It's in the face of the archer. It's called Phasis, the stare of the archer, right? So if you're in the gaze of that, you better watch out because you basically have a target on your back or on your chest or wherever. Um, and so, that ability to deliver a death blow, that's part of what Sagittarius represents. Yeah, I know it's supposed to be the flaming arrow of truth and all that, right? But like, come on, let's get real here. This is, arrows are made for shooting things. And then we have Ophiuchus, the snake charmer, who is able to transmute the deadly poison of the snake into wisdom, right? So you have the temples of Asclepius where you would go and there would be snakes writhing around on the floor and you would lay down and sleep with the snakes and have a dream and they would interpret the dream for healing and stuff like that. So this represents our ability to transmute deadly energy and bring it into a more positive vibration, essentially. And then Aquila, the eagle, represents the ability to fly above, to see above the drama of life and death that is part that and parcel of every being that is embodied in material form, and to see the higher truth that this higher spiritual truth that death is just a transition, and that it's not an end. It could actually be a beginning, and that if we want to just take it to really simple terms, I mean, I saw this and I just thought it was really cool. To me, this is an eagle awareness, right? Here you got Snoopy and Charlie Brown. And they're sitting by the campfire looking at the stars. And Charlie Brown says, yeah, he says, we only live once, Snoopy. And you hear people say that all the time, right? You only live once. Snoopy says, bull. You only die once, dude. You got to get up and live every single day. That's right. So you see this idea of going through life with this anxiety about, oh, death may be coming for us in a minute. It can keep us from actually living. And I think that this has been especially true for the last 20 years since 9/11, since really before that. I mean, if you think about it, going back to like Y2K, there was all this anxiety about, oh, the computers are going to shut down because they don't have the right digits or whatever, right? That didn't happen, and then, the terrorism and, every time you go through the airport, you got to be treated like you're a potential terrorist and all this stuff. And then, the financial crash and I mean, unbelievable to me. Almost every year, almost every day since that crash, you hear financial astrologers saying, oh, there's going to be another crash, there's going to be another crash, there's going to be another. And it's like, my God. And then, Trumpocalypse, if Trump gets elected, it's going to be the end of the world and everything. And which is not to say that I don't think that there's some truth to any of those things. But the point is, if you allow anxiety to run your programming, you're easily manipulated and you're maybe not even really fully living, and there's a reason why that this anxiety got a collective grip on us, and it's laid out really beautifully in this book by John Major Jenkins, Galactic Alignment, right? because basically, if we go back, that's not what I wanted. Here, I'm going to let me go back to this briefly. Go back to this other. So yeah, if we go back to this constellational diagram here, and by the way, all of these diagrams and all of this material I've gathered together in a report, as per usual, 10-page report with horoscopes for my members. If you want to find out more about membership, just go to the special offers page on my website at dreamastrologer.com. So now let's see, am I sharing my screen here? I go share screen. So yeah, notice that this line, this diagonal line, right, that is the galactic equator. Notice that it meets this horizontal line, which is the ecliptic, and this vertical line, which is 0 Capricorn. Those three form an exact intersection. Now, this doesn't happen every day. In fact, it doesn't happen but once every 26,000 years. So this is a monumental alignment of the plane of our galaxy, which is like the mothership, right? Remember those shirts? You are here. We're way out here on the edge of the galaxy, our little system, and the seasonal axis of the Earth, right? The earthly cross is aligning with this celestial cross. And that's pretty much what John Major Jenkins came to the conclusion of. That's why the Maya, had their calendar ending at, or, transitioning at this time, and so on and so forth. That this galactic alignment of the galactic equator with the 0 Capricorn axis, the earthly axis, that was that they saw that coming from thousands of years ago and thought it was a big deal. And so this idea of this, these 4 constellations and this, these various ways that we can psychologically deal with death is like front and center. You can't get away from it anymore, right? You literally can't get away from it anymore. I mean, every day, you're barraged with all these, it may be we may be entering this collapse of, like, yesterday the last rhinoceros or Sumatran rhinoceros died, and that's freaking sad, man. And there, you've got these young kids saying, Greta, Thunberg saying, be afraid, things are not going well, and all this, and this is why this alignment is forcing that into awareness. And so now this was exact in 2012, more or less, but but if precessional rate is about a degree every 72 years. So really, if you give it a 1-degree orb, it's a 144-year process, a degree before and a degree after, and we're kind of in the middle of that. So it's not going away anytime soon. And what happens is when you get these shorter term, we had a few years back, and I did a report on this for my subscribers, we had an alignment of the sun with Saturn right at 0 Capricorn, and therefore right on this galactic alignment. So you get galactic alignment 2.0 and galactic alignment 3.0 and so forth. As these faster moving planets come in and reactivate this, it's like an update in our ability to deal with this situation that the galactic alignment is presenting us with, right? That makes sense. Couple other things that I think are important to understand about another thing that John Major Jenkins, and this is his words, just so that but he said that well, first of all, in the Egyptian mythology, the Milky Way was seen as the body of the goddess Nut. And the Nut would swallow the sun at night and then birth the sun out of her vagina every morning. Literally, that's what they thought happened. And so there was this death rebirth through mother, basically, that was going on, right? through goddess that was going on, sky goddess. And then, John Major Jenkins said that the Mayans also basically saw this part of the Milky Way, because there's this band of stars, and then there's a dark part inside this brighter band. They saw it as basically, and again, these are his words, a cosmic vagina, which is like this birth canal. So it's not just about death, it's about birth too, you see. And so some of the mythology that goes along with this place, where does the Milky Way come from? Well, for the Greeks, as I said, for the Egyptians, it was Nut. For the Mayans, it was this sort of cosmic vagina place. Also, for the Greeks, a couple different versions of it was either Rhea, who was the wife of Saturn, and when they gave her the baby Zeus, or the stone that was supposed to look like him, and she pressed it against her breast to feed it, the milk flew out, and there you've got the Milky Way. And then the other version is that Zeus brought, while Hera was sleeping, and this is creepy, but it is what it is. Zeus brought his bastard child, in other words, by another woman, whatever you want to call that, not Hera's child, brought this other child, let's just say other child, Hercules, brought this child in who was not hers, but she's immortal, and he wants to make his boy immortal, so he brings Hercules in to nurse. And evidently Hercules, being, the warrior that he is, even as a baby, was really rough. And she woke up and pulled him away. And again, you had the milk flying out, and there you go. There's the Milky Way. Now, other than the creepiness of Zeus, which comes up quite a lot, one of the things that I think is really interesting here again is that you've got in the mythology, you've got this birth symbolism. So you've got both death and birth simultaneously present in this energy, and yet both are tremendously anxiety-filled events. Being born is a titanic struggle, man. You have the walls begin to close in on you. You're in this Eden paradise inside your mother, hanging out, you're getting fed, it's nice and warm and cozy, and all of a sudden the walls start closing in on you, right? This, like, mythically, this shows up in Star Wars. Remember when the beginning, the heroes are all in the trash compactor and the walls start closing in on them? It's a metaphor for being, spit out into the world, out of the mother. And then you get squeezed into this tunnel and you have to swim for your life. And Stan Groff, the teacher of Richard Tarnas, and actually an astrologer in his own right, he said that there's basically 4 stages in this process, and that the different planets go along with these different stages. And as we go through periods of rebirth in our life, whatever trauma that we experience during the birth process gets brought back up. Like, that's our pattern. That's like when we were born, the pattern was established, and then when we are reborn, that pattern gets recapitulated and re-experienced, and so forth. So really, whether you're talking about death or birth, it's a tremendously anxiety-filled event. And so either way, we can kind of see, yeah, okay, like, we're only human. You've got this alignment, and no matter which way you look at it, from the constellations, from the mythology, it's a heavy deal, right? And so, okay, we kind of got off track. We kind of got a little bit, we let our anxiety kind of get a hold of us where we weren't thinking clearly. But now maybe it's time to step back from all that, say, like, what is really the sensible thing to do about all this? You know what I'm saying? And kind of get a little bit of distance, a little bit of objectivity, because, it's a tremendously subjective, emotionally laden experience. Anxiety, by definition, is tremendously subjective and emotional. So yeah, I think that's you know, basically the goal here for me anyways, is to step back and now one of the ways that we can do that is we can use some of the tools that we have as astrologers, right? We have tools. Now, one of the ways that I like to do it is I look at the decan, the 10-degree segment of the zodiac, in which we're talking about, and there's an associated planetary ruler, and there's an associated tarot card. Now, the the planet that's associated with this decan in Sagittarius, and this is by the Chaldean Method, is Saturn. Now, what's funny about this is that Saturn in this system simultaneously represents endings and beginnings, because the system goes in descending order from the furthest planet to the closest, right? So it goes Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. Okay, so Saturn is actually the first in that order, but it's also like, you know, the last repetition of 7 is ending, and there's a new repetition of 7 beginning. So there's simultaneously an ending and a beginning every time you get Saturn as the decan ruler. Okay, plus Saturn represents the, you know, it's the end of what we can see in the sky. It's a natural limit. It's a ringed planet, you know. So there's this heaviness that goes along with that. Then in the tarot system, the cardinal signs represent the 2, 3, and 4 of a particular suit. The fixed signs represent 5, 6, and 7. And then the mutable signs represent 8, 9, and 10. So as the third decan of a mutable sign, it represents a 10. Once again, in the tarot, the 10s represent an ending, but they also represent actually a completion, really. But they also represent an ending that necessarily has to be, you know, you have to finish with that energy before you can start back at the 1, you know. So once again, a completion, ending, beginning, death, birth, all of this energy is right there. So, well, okay, you know, what do I do with that? Well, here's a really great example. Most people who are fans of rock and roll are familiar with one of the greatest albums of all time, the 4th album by Led Zeppelin, which is technically untitled. Some people call it Symbols. Some people call it Led Zeppelin 4, but there's no title. There's no band name. There's nothing but this esoteric. Jimmy Page just dropped his esoteric wisdom down. Look at this cat here, right? There's the 10 of Wands. Okay, and it's on this decrepit building that's falling apart. There's these endings that, right? And then, but look, then there's this new tower that's coming out of this, you know, skyline, this modern energy. So he's juxtaposing the old with the new. And a lot of people, I mean, he was definitely conscious of doing that. A lot of people have said that, you know, because the first couple albums were pretty successful, the third one not so much. You know, the word on the street was, Zeppelin is a bunch of hype, you know, they really aren't all that, blah, blah, blah. And so there was this burden, and the band felt it evidently, because look at this image that they're using. There was this burden to prove once and for all that they could live up to the hype, right? And in fact, they not only lived up to the hype, they exceeded it. They went a whole nother level. So there's this understanding of, hey, you know, we have to set this burden down, and like, rather than like try to live up to the expectations of everyone else, find what it is absolutely new that wants to come through us. Find that authentic center of our own energy that is truly us, and we will, by doing that, we will naturally exceed everyone else's expectations. But if we just define ourselves by other people's expectations, we may or may not be able to do that, because it's not ours. You see what I'm saying? So I think this is a really great example of understanding esoteric wisdom and understanding that, hey, it's time to step up, number one. I mean, with a 10, it's time to bring things to completion. And this was really the completion of the first part of the band's career. And then they had the second part of their career where they had a lot more artistic freedom because they didn't have to prove themselves to anybody anymore. We can just be artists. We don't have this onus over our heads of proving ourselves and living up to the hype and stuff anymore. So there's this kind of energy of like, okay, there's no going back. Like famously, Cortez burned his ships when he arrived on the Mexican peninsula, right? It's like, ain't no going back, y'all. We're taking this and we are going to succeed. And I feel like there's an energy of that Sagittarius fire sign that goes along with this. And I think if you understand it and you're not being controlled or driven by it, but you're channeling it consciously, that it can be very productive. And so I even went to the extent of it was Jupiter day, Jupiter hour. I created a bunch of Jupiter talismans for my subscribers. You can see here's the Kamea, the magic square of Jupiter. It contains 4 cells up, 4 cells down. Right here, of course, is the common glyph for Jupiter. This is the seal of Jupiter. Basically, what it does is if you transpose it on here, it covers all of the sections on the square, right? And then this is the name of the angel in Hebrew traced out across the square, Sachiel, or some people say Jophiel, right? This is the angel, this is the intelligence of Jupiter. This is Jupiter in the mental realm. And so I made talismans for all my subscribers. I managed to get in the 1 Jupiter hour. I'd used my old drafting tools and I laid everything out in pencil beforehand. And then I was able to complete, 4 packs of 11 of these bad boys in the 1 Jupiter hour, sigilizing them in ink, and then consecrated them as Jupiter and Venus and the Galactic Center were culminating. So I think that if you understand what this energy is and you engage with it creatively, I mean, come on, who wouldn't like to create their own Zeppelin 4, right? This monumental masterpiece that puts you in the running with for the ages, like you lay down your masterpiece. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but it is definitely stepping up to the next level, burning the boat and saying, I'm not going back. I'm not being manipulated anymore. I'm not going to be driven by what might happen to me. I'm not going to be manipulated by fear. I'm going to understand that my own authentic desire to create is what's driving me. And that naturally, simply by saying no to fear or saying, bring it on. It's a good day to die. Yeah. If I die, so be it. If I don't, I'm going to create something new and it's going to take me to the next level. And being willing to put your, to take that risk. In poker, Texas Hold'em poker, the move is all in. This, I'm going to live or die by this hand. It's the end of my tournament or it's the beginning of a next level of my tournament. And I think that ultimately that's what Jupiter on the galactic equator represents, on the galactic center. It represents, hey, I'm going all in with this or that or whatever your choice, whatever your authentic, creative driving force, whatever your bliss, your passion is, go with that. And don't let yourself be driven and manipulated by all these fears and anxieties. I mean, in short, the title of that article that I wrote back in 2011 for Planet Waves is "Make Love, Not Death." So that's pretty much the way I see it. Whenever the Galactic Center is involved, especially with the goddess of love, Venus, there. Um, all right, so that's about it for this time around. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you, everybody who lets their opinion be known by way of the various reviews that are available out there, and ratings and rankings and all that stuff. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for tuning in. Again, if you want horoscopes and all the visuals that go along with this and links for further reading and whatnot, you can become a member, and you get that sort of stuff every month. All my members are getting talismans this month, and I've got some talismans dialed up for them next month too as well. So you can find all about that on my website, dreamastrologer.com. And of course, check me out on Facebook. Oh, one last thing. Next episode of the podcast is going to be an interview with Amanda Walsh of Astrology Hub, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And also, I'm going to be taking part in their program. They've got I'm going to be sending out emails regarding they've got a free guide for 2020, forecast guide for 2020. You can get that just by sending in your email to them, and you'll get that link. They're going to have a free forecast marathon coming up that I'm going to be participating in. So if you want to hear about that stuff, make sure you're on my mailing list. I'm going to be sending out some links for that stuff. Really great people, really quality astrology info that they are bringing together for people. I'm really proud to be part of the lineup. There's people like Christopher Renstrom and Shireen Shostak, just to name a couple. Just really dear people to me, and I'm like, really proud to be part of that team. So be on the lookout for that. And until next time, bright blessings of Venus and Jupiter on the Galactic Center. Bye for now.